It's a magic button. Just one touch of the button, and a random object will appear. And there are buttons like this all over the room. You'll never guess what's next. The man's name is Jack. He's been trapped here for 3 days. This day he takes a ball and throws it. Took off his mask and saw, and there was a sushi dish, and he was hungry, but it's just sushi and no dipping sauce. So he pressed a button, but still the sushi popped up. He changed the buttons a few more times. The same sushi came up, so he just ate it. Wait until he has eaten all the sushi. When he presses it again, the dipping sauce pops up. Lying down on the floor to take a break, he pressed the button next to him again. A pair of 3D glasses came out. He put them on and started to look around. He saw a little angel. After making sure it wasn't a hallucination, Jack was overjoyed, thinking that this must be the key to getting out. He went over to it and pressed it. The whole room suddenly went black, and a countdown appeared behind him. This scared the hell out of Jack. He pushed the button as hard as he could, but the buttons on the wall faded away. A huge object appeared above his head. Jack slowly looked up. And when he woke up again, still in the same room, Jack was going crazy, pressing a button. A pair of chopsticks popped up behind him. He'd seen it all before. Then he started pressing the button repeatedly. The chopsticks just kept falling out. Jack was having a good time, but then he suddenly changed the button. As a result, Jack was so angry that he just slapped the next button. He finally stopped fighting and started reading the comic book, finished with episode 5. He wanted to watch episode 6, but episode 7 popped up. Another button brings up episode 8. There was no episode 6. When he pressed a button again, a door appeared behind him. This man is trapped in a room full of buttons. Each button corresponds to something. When he pushes this button, a mysterious door appears behind him, but Jack doesn't see it. By the time he reacts, he forgot which button it was, so he pressed one at random, and out came a primitive man, flashed past him, disappears into the wall, and then he tried the one next to him. At last Jack found the button for the door. He was so happy. He stood up and ran out, but the button popped up and the door closed at the same time. He went back and pressed it again. He speeds up and still can't get through. This time he does a 100-meter sprint, still a little short. He tries to use a tool to shorten the distance, but it's still too late. He gets a cart again, but the cart doesn't go in a straight line. He tried several times, but it wouldn't work. Jack began to study the button. He found that if he kept the button pressed, the door would stay open. So he brought in a vase of flowers, but the vase was too light to hold down. He suddenly came up with a great idea. Fill the vase with water, and then he pressed the vase against the button to open the mysterious door, and he'd be able to get out of here. He thought he was so clever. Pressing the button with his foot, a jet of water fell on his head, but the water only poured over his head, followed him everywhere he went. Jack tried everything he could. The little water he caught wasn't enough to water the flowers. Jack came up with a new idea, putting sushi in a vase, but it was too much for him to carry. Trying to reach out a bit, but can't get it in. Luckily, there are chopsticks here. He managed to get the vase over, but then he forgot which button it was. Only choose one at random. Then the primitive comes out and kicks the vase. This made Jack very angry. He covers the button with rice and the door does open, but the next moment, he taped it on again and beat it for a while. This time it seemed to work, but as soon as he turned around, a long time has passed. He had given up on the idea of escaping, but on this day he pushed the button, and a rope appeared. Jack's mind raced, like he'd thought of a way to get out. A man tries to escape from this mysterious room, but each time he comes up just short. Just as he was about to give up, a rope unexpectedly opens up. This gives him renewed hope. Grabbing the rope and pressing the button on the mysterious door, he swung straight through like a swing. But within 2 seconds of being happy, he found that the door wouldn't open. It turns out that the door requires a key. Jack was devastated. Just as the door closed, he ran back. He kicked the wall in anger, and out came a key. The key disappeared before he could walk over to it, but he didn't know which button he'd kicked. He had to press a random one. He almost died of fright. Finally, he found the button. Afraid won't remember. Ready to find something to mark. Point finger at the button and move backwards a little. Keep left hand still. Then pick up the pieces of meat on the floor. Put the meat on top as a marker when he get back. He carefully presses the next button. This time he presses the right one, marking the button. Then, he pressed the rope button, but the rope was too short to reach the key. Jack looked at the toilet plug in front of him and had an idea, so he started the magic trick. He shoved the key in. But the door still wouldn't open, and when he looked up, there was a combination lock. Jack was instantly crushed again, but he accidentally pushed a button. The primitive man came running out. Jack stares at him for a few seconds, and then walks away again. It took Jack half a day to realize the 3 numbers on the primitive's head must be the code. He then went back and forth several times, finally opened the combination lock, but then a new situation arose. Due to the small space, he was stuck in the door, can't go back or get in. He began to miss the time he had spent in the room before, although he couldn't go anywhere, but it was still fun. Suddenly a gust of wind ruffled his hair and brought him back from his memories. Looking at the crack in the wall, Jack reached out and pulled, and a passage opened up. He began to run as fast as he could, ran through door after door, but when he got out, he realized it was another room full of buttons. That's the end of today's story. Thank you for your interest.